MMO means nothing anymore. I want to watch this. I'm kind of interested to see what this is. Oh, wow.
Times are changing. We might be at risk of losing something, and I think that might be why Ashes of Creation is something people really want. So, does this look like an MMO to you? How about this? Or this? Hell, this is a bit out there, but what about this game? Well, apparently they're all considered MMOs. And which of these do you play? In fact,
I don't think anybody considers Path of Exile an MMO. I don't think anybody considers Diablo Immortal an MMO either.
What parts of these games actually matter to you? Because spoiler, the whole thing's changed. Soulframe is a new MMORPG, recently announced with an evocative cinematic that promises a beautiful fantasy world.
Bro, I'm gonna watch that after this. Remember me to watch that after this. We're gonna look at it.
And one that's definitely very different to the existing MMO lineup. People are pumped as hell about it, despite it being super early. And rightfully so. It comes from a renowned developer who's been running a game, mostly successfully, for over 9 years.
Imagine that.
The clue is in the title. It's the people behind Warframe, Digital Extremes. The weird part is that it seems like a departure. Warframe itself is hardly an MMO. It's mostly a hallway murder sim with an insanely grindy loot loop.
Okay.
Or is it? For the first 4 years, it was solely a lobby-based instanced game, but then they made big instances, landscapes.
That's badass.
They support up to 50 players, and
really
generally
cool.
They had more and more open-world content added, but for the most part, it's a small group content game at its core with some player hubs. Maybe it's earned the MMO subtag, but it's still a far cry from what you would expect of that label given the past. And that sparked a question that we should explore. What defines an MMO? We could argue about the...
I think it's just as simple as this. MMORPG, most games are massively multiplayer and online. Like whether it's Tower of Fantasy, Diablo Immortal, World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy, or Path of Exile, they are massively multiplayer and they are online. I think that people like the idea of playing a game that is a shared online space alongside other people. That doesn't mean that they want to have to group to do every quest. That doesn't mean that they might ever even want to group with anyone ever. But they like being in that online virtual space. And I think that's what's so good. I think that's a good thing. It's a great thing.
Literal definition of massively multiplayer online or role-playing game, but that boils down to semantics, and let's be real, we all know the term RPG has been just about ruined over the last 20 years.
That's true, yes.
So what we really have to deal with is reality.
Okay.
r/MMORPG, as an example, has this list of MMO subreddits. These are MMOs. I think we can all agree in that. But it also has a list of MMO likes, which they explain as having MMO-like qualities, whatever that means, and they even point out that...
Yeah, I would honestly, I would categorize Diablo Immortal as an MMO-like game. What do you guys think? Like, I wouldn't even say that, like, Tower of Fantasy is a full MMO game. I would say even Tower of Fantasy is like, yeah, sure.
And the sub voted, 60% thought that Destiny was an MMO. There are a lot of players playing, even though you can only play with a few at a time. You can see plenty in the world, and it's got numbers in it that I guess you grind to go up. MMORPG it is. Even Anthem would debatably fall under the same category, but almost nobody called it one. And if Destiny is an MMORPG, then surely so too is Warframe. But that puts these games at odds with classic MMOs. Dark Age of Camelot, EverQuest, WoW, Guild Wars 2, EVE, RuneScape, ESO. The classic MMO being largely indicated by being set in a shared world and players going about their business alone or in groups, but either way, they were always interacting with each other. You could have
I think that a lot of people played WoW like a single-player game 95% of the time. I know that's what my mom did. Like, she was in a guild, and nobody would ever talk to her in the guild because they knew that she didn't want to talk to them. She was just in the guild for the perks, and this was a purely transactional relationship, and there was nothing more to it than that. And so they left her alone. She left them alone. Everything was fine. GM took a break. Guild leader transferred over to her. She kicked everybody out of the guild and took the guild back. It is what it is.
Conversation. You could go on quests together, trade items, duel, the works.
Yeah.
The massively multiplayer part didn't come from the player count, but a vibe that you could do this with everyone.
Yeah.
Basically like showing up to a town and seeing a whole bunch of people with different roles in life. Some
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that back then, MMO is kind of a dated term. Because, like, MMO in itself meant something and it was valuable back in, like, 2005. But now, because everybody has the technology, MMO is just okay. Every game is an MMO to an extent.
Recognize from before, some you might be inspired by because of whatever title or items they have, and then a healthy dose of strangers who may just be friends that you haven't met yet. They were focused often on being sandboxes with just enough toys for players to be able to build their very own virtual lives. But as focusing on gameplay systems got more important for developers, for a vast number of reasons, content started to become king over building a good sandbox where really the players via their interactions build the content themselves. So the prospect of a theme park MMO came to power, and we woke up one day and realized that the MMO market looked substantially different. Could you say that the Destiny-like experiences are just theme park MMOs with the inefficient bits polished out?
Yes.
Who knows?
In a lot of
ways.
ways.
As action, combat, and tight progression loops became more and more prevalent, the staples of sandboxes and player interaction kind of sprout.
I think people like the sandbox, though. Like, I feel like even sandbox MMOs are designed to encourage people to do certain things. Like, I think that sandbox is like whenever you can't tell what they're encouraging you to do as strongly.
Put it up elsewhere in new forms. Because now if you want a social sandbox, you'd go and play a less massive survival game like DayZ, Rust, or H1Z1, or something old like OSRS. As Andrew Ross wrote for Engadget in an article calling the genre survival MMOs, quote, "I love MMOs."
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a good way to look at Rust. Like, I hope that the Blizzard survival game, remember whenever the announcement for that came out and we haven't heard anything else since then? I remember whenever that happened, that's what I hope that it's like. I hope that it's almost like, Rust, Valheim, something like that.
But recent theme parks and building games have left me wanting something a bit more dangerous, but still not a pointless murder fest.
Yeah.
To him, the MMO had lost its teeth. That sense of danger and realness that World PvP brought, and people definitely love that short-term social cooperation or antagonism that survival games bring. Mm-hmm. You can have some of the most fantastic and unique stories as a result of their sandboxes. Sure, their type of quest doesn't have the same D&D-like flavor of some of the MMOs, but it is quite a similar experience in many ways. MMO became a...
I will say that, like, I have more and, like, stronger memories of doing different activities in Rust that effectively were a quest. I have stronger memories of that than I do from leveling in the recent WoW expansions. Much more so. And I remember it much more fondly.
Umbrella term for whatever had servers and players, but it stopped communicating really
WoW,
anything else.
That's not the goal.
Even Final Fantasy XIV had to fight off some of the MMO assumptions when it came to story. When Shadowbringers was being called the best JRPG story in a decade, it notably had the caveat, yes, we know it's an MMO, but seriously, we mean it. To get to the actual game that sparked this video, though, will Soulframe itself actually be an MMO?
We'll see.
Now, according to the developers, it's a free-to-play open-world adventure that is heavily influenced by themes of nature, restoration, and exploration.
I think it's really important if you have an open world game that anybody can interact with anybody out in the world. I think that is just so important. Like, you might need channels, like, like how a lot of games have channels, but I hope there's no servers. Like, I don't want any servers on the game. I want it to be, You log on to the game, you can play with anybody.
It's focused on melee compared to Warframe's shooting, and it's going to be slow and heavy instead of crazy high speed. It's also going to share Warframe's focus on co-op PvE, and in fact, here's a quote, "It still has a lot of similarities to the genre they have experience in, but a greater focus on exploration." So it certainly seems like
I don't know if any game's really gonna nail exploration. I feel like exploration is like a, you're chasing a dragon that doesn't exist. Oh yeah, we want people to explore things. It's like, meanwhile, they're on the other monitor as YouTube, and it's like, you know, the 75 points of interest inside of X or Y video game, and this is the most hyper-optimized route to reach all 4 of them, or all 75 of them, in 3.7 hours.
It'll be more of an MMO than Warframe, but whether or not that exploration means spending hundreds of hours in a shared world like old school MMOs, or just doing some fun open world content between instanced gameplay sessions like Lost Ark, well, we'll have
I think, like, for example, like Lost Ark has no real exploration type content. Like, it's not really, like, maybe going to like a couple of the islands is kind of cool, but like other than that, that's just not what the game's really built around.
Wait and see. Honestly, the point of this was just a thought that arose. What the hell is an MMO today? We have a sense of tribalism and community that comes from being an MMO player, but that term is almost worthless in a genre that has become far more broad. Take the news of Tower of Fantasy and Throne and Liberty there recently.
We need to watch
They're both
that.
called MMORPGs, but you absolutely have no idea how they're going to play until you watch the gameplay trailer, and even that doesn't always help.
No, it
Take
doesn't.
Tower of Fantasy, it's basically a more involved Genshin Impact, but in a shared world with global world bosses
totally
and
different.
content, and of course, plenty of gacha. Throne and Liberty, given its length of development, does
Totally
look
different,
more
guys.
like an older MMO with some more modern sensibilities.
I'm not. Yes, Throne and Liberty. It does look very cool. Like all of these games, I'll play all of these games because I want to see. I think with almost every game, there are really cool things that exist inside the game that have value. They're unique and fun to do. I'm down to play these new games. It's like kind of like I view it as like a tool belt. And the more things I know and the more games I've played, the more tools I have.
A massive amount of players doing stuff together, hard group PvE, open world PvP, exploration with others, and all of that. But of course, with modern visuals and action combat.
Yeah, we'll see how
both games
that
look
goes.
great enough, and they're both clearly MMOs in the literal sense. But there was a heavy moment of doubt before actually checking them out to see if they would fit the bill. Basically, nowadays calling something an MMO is really not that useful whatsoever because the entire industry has attempted to move to that direction, and I think there's many reasons why. A lot of them are obvious to us. Of course, when someone says MMO, you'll probably...
I think one of the big reasons why it's good to have an open world for the developers is that having an open world creates an economy around looking cooler than somebody else and like having cool things to show off. So like you can get people to be more motivated to farm cosmetic items, and you can also get people to be more motivated to buy cosmetic items. Like, I think this is a big thing in PoE that they don't utilize enough. Like, I think it's really cool at the beginning of the league, and you see everybody there in, like, the Act 1, like, on the beach. And like, back in the day, you'd see, like, maybe a handful of other people in Oriath. Like, I thought that was badass, and I hope that in PoE 2, there's, like, open world areas. Not like, open world game. But like an open world city or something like that where like you can go and inspect other people and see what kind of gear they have and shit. I think that'd be really cool.
You think of something that asks
I'd
for a
love
hell of
that.
a lot of time and has a gearing or item level loop, which brings us to a very fun exploration. So here are 4 games that range from considered an MMO to marketing calls it an MMO but nobody else does to no one would dare call this an MMO but they could sort of get away with it. So first, Lost Ark. No one would challenge the categorization. MMO players play it, MMO websites and channels cover it.
I think that what people really define as an MMO is a game that has end-game PvE content or some sort of large group content that it is required to do if you want to reach the highest level possible in that game. I think that is what really, in people's mind, is a differentiator between something being an MMORPG and what's not. So, like, for example, in Lost Ark, you have the Legion raids. So that's why it's an MMO, is because you need to do the Legion raids, and you have to group up with people to do the Legion raids.
And you spend a large
I think that's what it
portion
is
of
in
the
the
game
eyes of people.
running around a shared world, doing stuff with other players. But the major focus and main point of the game is the grinding loop of instanced content, 4 to 8 players, which is far from massively, and brings it closer to something like Destiny in reality. And remember, only 60% of the votes in that poll thought Destiny was an MMO. But clearly something has changed, because everyone is happy to call Lost Ark 1.
Yeah.
Then there's Diablo Immortal. It's actually not that far removed from Lost Ark, right? I mean, it borrows heavily.
No, it's actually not. There are bosses in Diablo Immortal that you need a group for. You could make if somebody wanted to make the argument that Diablo Immortal was an MMO, I wouldn't fight with them. I would be like, it's not as much of an MMO as like WoW or like Final Fantasy, but like, yeah, sure. Yeah, okay, that's fine with me.
With it from things like the Reliquary, Platinum, and seeing other players do their business in the world around you. I don't know about you, but despite it seemingly qualifying as an MMO, it feels just a little bit off to call it one, right? It just doesn't have the vibe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's because it's a Diablo game and they are just not called MMOs by most. It's weird. Blizzard call it an MMO, but I basically have never heard another person say Diablo Immortal is an MMO.
That's not true, for me at least. Remember that guy Rax, the guy who helps run Maxroll, and he quit Diablo Immortal? And he was talking about how his experience in the beta of Diablo Immortal was very akin to what an MMO was like, and that's why he enjoyed it so much. Rax. Yeah. So that's not entirely true in my circumstances. But I watched a lot of content about the game, too.
Now, the obvious link from Immortal is Path of Exile. If Immortal qualifies as an MMO because Lost Ark qualifies as an MMO...
Well, I think that's not true. Because, for example, there is no challenge in Path of Exile that you can't do solo. Like Uber Elder, Uber Super Mega Ultimate Cirrus. They are all doable by a single player. With Diablo Immortal, like Gorgotha, I'm pretty sure that's what its name is, you need a group for that. And like for a lot of the other missions and like dungeons, you need a group for that. I think that's what the clear difference is. So I think that I don't think the two games are the same at all.
And Path of Exile should 99% qualify too.
No.
You've got global chat, you see other players in the shared hubs, and you don't really interact that much with them, and you don't actually see them in the gameplay areas. You do content alone or in a small group, but you do exist in a shared community, and you get those social interactions in the hubs. It's a minuscule...
You did, but like everybody's sequestered into their own hideout. I think hideouts are good, but I wish that there were more reasons to go to the open areas. Like, I think that would be cooler, personally.
Enough difference, and it's one that doesn't really feel like it matters. But thankfully, we've actually got a lot of words from the developers about why they hate being called an MMO, even before the game launched. This 2,400-word forum post basically boils down to, Path of Exile is not an MMORPG, it's an online action RPG. Saying they want to be distanced from the MMORPG term, applying of course to WoW clones at the time, and saying it would be a major technical risk to make the game support more players per area and require more players as a result of that.
Yeah, I think that's probably why. I mean, I don't think that PoE should become an MMO. Like, I don't think Path of Exile should, like, add in bosses that you need 4 people to kill. I don't think that's what they should do, ever. Like, that's not what the game is. But I do think that it's not unreasonable to think that it would be really cool if we had, like, a main city that everybody could go to. Like, that would be really cool.
There were also tidbits about instances allowing randomness that Chris Wilson, the lead at Grinding Gear Games who wrote the post, actually reiterated almost 12 years later, just a few weeks ago, when he was talking to Josh Strife Hayes.
Probably watch this at some
Basically, being a traditional MMO limited them too much, so they decided not to be one. Although it's worth noting that Chris didn't object to Josh calling Path of Exile an MMO in that interview, so maybe they're happier with it now.
Well, I think that, I mean, if you listen to, like, what he said in the main reason why he said he didn't like being called an MMO is because it's, like, conflating the game with World of Warcraft. And I think also that the term has evolved over the years.
And maybe that's because the definition has changed. What's accepted to be an MMO has changed.
Look at that.
The takeaway here is it isn't an MMO, but it falls under the same blanket now that the genre is different.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's less about genre and it's more about potential player base. Now, our final example might raise some eyebrows, but I'm doing this to make a point.
I haven't played Monster Hunter. I can't really speak
Monster
on this
Hunter
one.
is basically a tiny step away from this modern definition of an MMO. There's no shared world, it's session-based only, but it has every other bit of what a action MMO sort of gameplay thing would be.
What is that?
Instanced, session-based boss battles that are solo or multiplayer, allowing a long-tail progression with regular live updates and crafted gear loops that last for months. The only thing it's missing to fit with Destiny and Warframe is just a shared hub where you see other players, and I guess there, slap it on now, we call it an MMO.
That's a huge thing.
And the question I want to ask you today is, does that really matter?
Yeah.
When the MMO genre has largely became about the flavor of PvE or PvP content and a satisfying gearing loop to keep playing,
does matter.
Does the massively part actually matter when you are playing the game? And that's the thing.
Yeah, it does. The reason why it matters is the same reason why people care about if Valorant or Counter-Strike is more popular than the other. People want to play the game that everybody else is playing, and I think that the hype of a game at the very beginning is also kind of what makes it fun. It's like back in the day whenever you were playing WoW and you'd log on and everybody was like, oh shit, you know, like we have 9 million subs in WoW now, 10 million subs in WoW. Everybody's talking about it. You feel like you are in the place that you need to be. You are in the eye of the storm of what is happening now. And I think that people want to be in that. They want to be doing what everybody else is doing. They want to be accomplishing something that has a widespread value. It's like getting Challenger in League of Legends has much more value to people than getting whatever the fuck the equivalent of is it in Heroes of the Storm. It's because everybody knows about League. People care about League. League is like an important, super popular game. Nobody gives a fuck about Heroes of the Storm. So the accomplishments that you have don't mean as much. That's
Even
why.
look at World of Warcraft. In modern days, World of Warcraft has become less of an MMO, more, as Chris would put it, of an online action role-playing game. Because so much of what you do in WoW ultimately for so many of its players involves session-based instanced combat.
It's always been like that.
So I think that the MMO term has become basically useless. And for you, presumably you're an MMO player,
yeah,
I think that means it's worth thinking about what part of the MMO genre you actually like. And maybe us working out how to describe it in a different way so that when we say MMO or whatever the replacement is, it actually refers to the sorts of...
I like all of it. I love games like Path of Exile. I like the shared world aspect of Diablo Immortal whenever people weren't stealing my mobs. I like classic WoW. It was really fun. It was cool whenever I wasn't getting chased by fucking 5 different stream snipers. It was great. Classic WoW had a great open world. Also, Rust. I thought Rust was amazing too. I loved it so much. It was so much fun for me. So I don't think that there has to be one or the other. It's just, you know, there's different, you know, like some days you get into one thing, like you play one game and then like you hit a plateau in that and you go play something else.
Games that we want to play. And that's why I mentioned Ashes of Creation at the very top of this video. I think it's the sort of MMO that right now, the MMO label isn't particularly covering for that many people.
No, it's not.
I think that's why they are so goddamn excited. So yeah, what do you think? Is the MMO genre label still useful to you? Or has it become something different? Has what the modern market makes become something different?
I feel like if somebody calls something an MMORPG, it's probably going to have a lot of the features that I like, even though it's definitely been watered down by a massively substantial level.
Different. Would you rather create your own fun in a big shared world with other players, or
yes,
would you rather a more Destiny-like experience or a WoW Mythic Plus-like experience where, yeah, sure, there's a big world or whatever, but kind of here for my gameplay and my gearing loop, don't...
You need to have instance content. You can either have challenging content or instance content. Or sorry, you can either have easy content or instance content. Because any boss that you have in the open world, oh, he's designed for 10 people? Well, we bring 20. Okay, he's not that hard now, huh? Yeah, wow, look at that. And if you add in, like, these different types of, like, crowd control mechanics, where it just, like, kills everybody after the first 10 people that engage him, or something like that, then you run into a whole other problem with griefing. So, scaling per player, then you have more griefing. And then also there are certain types of scaling. So like, oh, well, he scales his health, but he doesn't scale his damage. So we bring 10 fucking healers and nobody ever dies. It just takes longer. Trust me, if there is a way, if the boss is in the open world, people will fucking exploit the shit out of it. Like, I remember we did the same thing with Classic WoW. Classic WoW, the dragons, to be fair, actually were pretty good for world bosses that were hard to overgear. But they weren't perfect, and people still fucking did it.
Care about that other stuff. I think it's a little bit more of a subculture around MMO players, and I think that's honestly where a lot of drama and disagreement comes from. Mm-hmm. From mixed expectations.
Yeah.
A breakdown of communication.
I think a lot of drama just comes from the fact that the games come out and they're bad, or they're like a cash grab, or they have like shitty monetization or something like that. Like that's why that's why people are pissed off. Like it's not about the name; it's about the game.
Because the meaning of MMO is broken down. Food for thought. Anyway. We have more videos on this
I like this video a lot.
ASAP covering some games that you'll expect.
Are you against battle passes? No, I'm not against battle passes.
Stay tuned and let me know, what the hell does MMO even mean to you?
Yes. I understand, like, this has been, like, a big thing. People have been mad about battle passes. I'm okay with the Diablo 4 battle pass. Yes, I am totally fucking fine with the Diablo 4 Battle Pass. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. And that's a video right there. It's a Bellular video. We watch all of his videos. They're fucking great. So make sure to watch that. I'll talk about this just for a second. Yeah, I don't think that there's anything wrong with a Battle Pass fundamentally. I think some people don't like certain types of battle passes, and I can see why. But with the Diablo 4 battle pass and the way that they've stated it, if the game it comes out in the way that they said that it will, which again, we'll see if that happens, there's nothing wrong with it. People don't like FOMO. Oh, people don't like FOMO. There's FOMO in every single game. It's just that some games do a better job at hiding it so dumb people don't see it. Every game has FOMO. Like, I don't want to hear it. What the hell is FOMO? People don't like the idea that there are limited rewards in the game that you can only obtain by at certain times. They want everything to be obtainable at all times without any restrictions. Basically. PoE just added FOMO today. Everything is fucking FOMO. Like, that's just... Like, FOMO is like the most basic marketing technique that you can have. Of course they're going to use FOMO. Every other company uses FOMO. Obviously this is going to happen. And do you want to know why they keep using it? It's because it works. It gets people to log on. They wouldn't keep doing it if it didn't work. It's common sense. It's super dismissive of the increasing amount of direct FOMO culture in video games. People are going to complain. Of course they are. Well, it's dismissive because it's stupid. Oh, wow, I have to get this right now. No, you don't, you fucking weirdo. Stop it. You've got 8 other costumes in the game. You don't need number 9. Take your fucking medication. Holy shit. People are fucking... They're nuts. Just stop it. Like, if you don't want to do it, then stop fucking doing it. Stop blaming the video game because you're neurotic. Jesus. It's so annoying. I mean, there's levels of FOMO. Yes, there are, of course, right? And I'm not going to say, like, all FOMO is good, all FOMO is bad. No, but I don't think a battle pass is the end of the world. I really don't think I don't think it's a big deal. Talk about HOTS. I mean, Blizzard made everything complicated. Bro, Blizzard does that with every game. But it's a new visor for my Spartan in Halo. It's a first-person shooter game. You can't even see the visor. Don't worry about it. I mean, again, like, I think that there are regulations that need to happen. Like, do I think that the government should make it to where you can't have FOMO in a video game? Absolutely fucking not. Absolutely fucking not. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my entire life. Like, as if FOMO is even in the same conversation as gotcha boxes and 17 different types of currencies. People like that devalue the whole message because they conflate their personal opinion with something that's like fucking provenly bad. It's not a big deal, but it's a step. People have the right to not like it. Everybody has the right to think whatever they want. That doesn't mean that I don't have the right to think that what they think is stupid. Of course people have the right to do, duh, what? But what I'm saying is that the world doesn't need to change because you're neurotic. Sometimes it's just your fault. I think that saying that battle passes are bad categorically because they encourage FOMO is like, it's true in an abstract sense, but it completely removes any conversation of like where the line is out of the conversation. It removes it. It's like, well, it's all bad. Okay, well then, all right, there we go. That's not really much to say. If you fall for FOMO, then you're mentally handicapped. Is the industry designed to target at-risk individuals? I hate to tell you this, man, but every single type of advertisement is designed to make you do something that you are not normally going to do. Stop trying to fucking say this is at-risk individuals just because somebody can't fucking stand the idea of their character not having every single item in the wardrobe for the video game. Stop trying to say that, like, oh, this is all people that have mental disorders. No, there's plenty of people that are just being fucking weird and they want the whole game and the whole world to fucking revolve around their own neurotic state of mind. Stop it. Just stop it. It's so weird. Do you have all the things installed in WoW? I do. There are plenty of things that yeah, that's not even the point. Yeah. You can do it. It's just don't complain about it the whole time. Jesus.